Hello, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of Lights Out, your virtual campfire. I'm your hostess with the mostest ghosties, Sylvia Schultz. One of the historical landmarks of Springfield, the capital of Illinois, is the Dana House. It was designed and built by Frank Lloyd Wright for the eccentric Susie Laurence Dana. It's a beautiful, opulent example of Wright's prairie style, and it is part of Springfield's fascinating history. It is haunted by the lonely, melancholy spirit of Susie herself. Let's take a stroll through this architectural masterpiece and go lights out. One of Frank Lloyd Wright's most famous and intriguing homes is the Dana House in Springfield, Illinois. Construction started in 1902, and the huge house was finished in 1904. It's a magnificent example of Wright's prairie style, the first of Wright's designs to feature two-story rooms, like the hall, the gallery, and the dining room. Frank Lloyd Wright fans and architecture enthusiasts drool over this house, which features a library with glass-fronted built-in bookcases, a billiards room, and a bowling alley. And paranormal investigators salivate because, although management and state officials deny it, the Dana House is haunted, very haunted. The Dana House was built at the request of Susie Laurence. Born in October 1862, Sue married Edwin Ward Dana on December 4, 1883. The marriage was short and fraught with financial troubles. Edwin Dana was a businessman, but not a very good one. Starting out as a real estate investor, Dana set himself up as president of the Western Business Agency. When that failed, his father-in-law sent him to Oregon to manage some mines. In Oregon, Edwin suffered a fatal accident in one of the mines. Susie came back to Springfield, her spirits in tatters. Her husband was dead, and she had also buried two infant children that she'd been unable to carry to term. On February 17, 1901, a few years after Susie's return from Oregon, her father passed away. R.D. Lawrence's death was another blow to the young widow, but it left her with a financial windfall. She decided to build a grand new home for the surviving members of her family, herself, her mother, her grandmother, who would pass away a year and a half later in August 1902, and her cousin, Flora Lawrence. Wanting the sophistication a Chicago architect could bring to sleepy Springfield, she tapped Frank Lloyd Wright for the job. Susie Laurence Dana lived a life marked by tragic losses, despite her elegant surroundings. She married a concert singer from Denmark in March 1912. Jorgen Constantin Dahl was half Susie's age, so it was quite the scandal. He died just a year later. In 1915, she married a native of Springfield, Charles Gehrman. They eventually separated, and she divorced him in 1930. Susie had no head for money. In 1915, she received about $10,000 in income from her father's rental properties. Unfortunately, she had borrowed $132,000 to fund her lavish lifestyle. Susie turned to the spirit world for advice and consolation. She held seances in her home on a regular basis, inviting the cream of Springfield society. Maybe some of that spiritualist energy is imbued in the walls of the gracious home. Susan Laurence Dana passed away on February 20th, 1946, but her spirit still seems to linger in her beloved home. In life, Susie loved to throw parties. She started things off with a bang during the holiday season of 1904, the year the house was finished. She hosted lavish holiday parties. She followed those up with housewarmings for the Women's Club, parties for local children, including those in orphanages, dinners for residents of nursing homes, and a special gala for the families of the workers who had built the house. And apparently, Susie still loves the holidays. I spoke with Mike Anderson, a folk musician also jovially known as the Dulcimer Guy. Along with other musicians, Mike performs for the open houses held at the Dana House every December. Mike has been performing at the home for nearly 40 years, and he readily admits to several chilling experiences. He claims that the house definitely has its own personality. Mike brings the unique perspective of a musician to his experiences. One of the favorite places to put a musician is above the front door. There's a balcony there, he said. There was one year myself and a vocalist and a guitar player were doing Christmas music on that balcony. The sun was pouring through a window, and that sun was hot. The musicians' shifts were 8 hours long, with the musicians playing in 2 to 3 hour stints. The other 2 performers took a break, leaving Mike in the balcony to play solo. Suddenly the balcony got deathly cold to the point where I could barely move my fingers to play, and it stayed that way for about 10 minutes. During another Christmas open house, one of the performers was a young violin player, a boy about 12 or 14 years old. As the seasoned performer, Mike led the boy to the balcony where his violin music would dazzle guests coming in the front door, while Mike set himself up in the gallery. As Mike went towards the gallery, he heard the boy's panicked voice calling him back. Mike returned to the front door and looked up at the boy. The violin player peered down at him, his face a picture of woe. "I can't play here," the boy said. "Why not?" "I don't know." The boy, a budding professional, was clearly chagrined at his own behavior. But when he mentioned that his fingers were freezing cold, Mike realized immediately what the issue was. He switched places and sent the young violinist to the gallery instead. Mike shared another strange experience he had in the Dana house, and again it happened regularly during the Christmas open houses. "The house is set up so that you can pretty much tell where people are from the sound of their voices," Mike told me. He was set up to play on the balcony, and he kept an ear cocked for approaching tour groups. When a group came within earshot of the balcony, Mike would start playing a Christmas carol on the dulcimer. One day, as the tour group came up, Mike dropped into "What Child Is This?" He noticed a woman walking several steps behind the tour group. She was wearing a long winter coat, in deference to the season. The group moved on into Susie's bedroom, but the woman in the long coat stopped on the steps leading down to the bedroom just off the balcony. From the corner of his eye, Mike saw the group go into the room while the woman hung back. Mike turned to say to her, "You need to catch up with your group." But the woman was gone. This happened several times, and each time Mike had just launched into "What Child Is This?" on the balcony. It got to where I could almost make her appear just by playing that particular carol, Mike told me. Later, a harp player joined the ensemble of performers. She'd been at the house before, so Mike asked, "Is there any place you don't want to be stationed?" The harp player shrugged. "Not really. But the balcony can get pretty weird." Mike nodded fervently. "I know exactly what you mean," and he told the harpist his story. The harpist's face paled. "You mean you've seen her too?" The Dana house is magnificent inside. There are 16 public rooms in the house and 25 other spaces of varying sizes. The interior walls are cream-colored and highlighted with ornate woodwork. The library has built-in bookcases with glass fronts. The walkway to the gallery is covered and doubles as a conservatory. Underneath that walkway is a billiards room and a bowling alley. According to the state of Illinois, there is nothing remotely supernatural about the Dana house. But the staff at the historic home have had plenty of experiences that convince them otherwise. Kathy Leisman shared some stories with the State Journal-Register newspaper in 2009. At the time, she'd been giving tours of the house for 20 years. The tales Leisman tells range from slightly out of the ordinary to downright spooky. One day, Leisman heard what she describes as the saddest humming coming from the billiards room in a downstairs portion of the home. Thinking it was a radio that had been left on, Leisman walked down to take a look for herself. The radio wasn't playing. There was nobody in the room. Later, she heard the sound of folding chairs being thrown down the stairs. Again, there was no one there. On a different day and in a nearby coat room, Leisman remembers seeing doorway curtains seemingly float back and forth. When she inspected them, again, she found no tour group and not another living soul in the building. On one particular day, Leisman saw a woman dressed in black walking downstairs from the home's master bedroom. Leisman called out to the woman, but she continued walking down another flight of stairs to the basement. Thinking it was probably someone lost during a tour, Leisman inquired which volunteer had just taken a group through the house. She was told there had been no tours. "I personally think it was probably Susan," she said. Mike Anderson shared another spooky story with me, one that had nothing whatsoever to do with music, or indeed with Susie Dana. He was in the house with Phyllis Eubanks, an employee with the park system. This is before Springfield sites were split into parks and historical sites. They were in the house together, and Phyllis said, "Come with me, there's something I want to show you." Mike said, "Where are we going?" This was before Mike was really familiar with the house's layout. Phyllis answered, "I'm not going to tell you." She led him down to the basement of the house, to a hallway that doesn't really go anywhere. It's just a dead end. At the end of the hallway was a file cabinet. "There's a file in the top drawer," Phyllis said. "Go get it for me, okay?" Mike started down the hallway. He took 2 or 3 steps, then found out that he couldn't go any further. He came back, shaking his head. "I can't do it." She gave him a faint smile. "I can't either," she admitted. Mike had no explanation for this phenomenon, but he did have a theory. He told me that before the Dana house was recognized as a historic site, an insurance company had their offices there. And in that file cabinet, or so the story goes, is where the Springfield Police Department used to store their reports on unsolved crimes. The Dana house is an amazing example of Frank Lloyd Wright's architectural chops. It's unbelievably gorgeous inside and out, and well worth a visit if you find yourself in Illinois' capital city with a few hours to spare. And while you're there, do say hello to Susie Laurence Dana. She would be delighted to know that you've toured her house and that you've appreciated its beauty. Next time, we're going north to Chicago for a visit to the Museum of Science and Industry. We're going to take an imaginary ride on a very real train, the Zephyr. All aboard the next time we go Lights Out.